Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Muddy Mint. Today, we're doing something super special. This is a much requested video and recipe, and I'm so excited to finally share with you our body butter recipe. So we've released our body butter recipe on our website at muddymint.com, and it's one of our most popular products and our most requested recipes. So super happy to finally have it available for you. This video is meant to go along with the recipe, but even if you don't have the recipe, hopefully you'll pick up some tips and tricks on how to formulate your own body butter. So body butter is a really special product. First of all, it is all made up of oils and there's no water at all. So it's a nice thick consistency. Our body butter is kind of like a mousse, and it's this really great texture that we achieve through the ingredients, but also through how we make it. And so what I'm going to do today is show you exactly how we make it. So if you do have the recipe, you can follow along, and this will help you figure out how to make the body butter and see the type of consistency that you're looking for when you make it. If you don't have the recipe, then just check it out and see if this is something you might be interested in making. So like I said, a body butter is all made up of oil, so it doesn't have water, which means it doesn't need a preservative. When you don't have a preservative in something, you can call it all natural, which is nice. But just remember that if you do include water in a product, you definitely do need to have a preservative. Even if you don't have water in your product, you still want to make sure to educate your consumer about how to use the product and not introduce any water into the jar. So this is an important part of making all natural products like body butters and sugar scrubs that people typically use in the bathroom where there is water. So you want to let people know not to introduce water if you don't have a preservative. Now, if you're concerned, definitely use a preservative. But in this particular recipe, we do not have a preservative. We only have 4 ingredients, actually. We have avocado butter, which I have in here in the stainless steel bowl, which goes with this mixer, which I'll talk about in a second. We have some, let's see, in here we have mango butter and jojoba oil. So this has been warmed up and then cooled down. So basically what I did is I filled this container up, or actually filled up, I have what's called a master batch. In the recipe that I'm talking about, we're going to talk about how to do a master batch. In other words, you make a master batch of this mango butter and jojoba oil, and that'll help you make multiple batches in a row of this body butter. It's just a little bit of a quicker, more efficient way to do it. But anyway, I mixed up this master batch. I put it in the microwave for about 2.5 minutes and basically liquefied the whole thing. And then I let it sit for quite a while. I probably let it sit for 3 hours just because I let it sit at room temperature. This room here is about 70 degrees right now. So it cooled down to 70 degrees and then I just bumped it up a tiny bit. So right now our oils, our mango butter and jojoba are at 74.5 degrees. Now this is super important because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding these liquid oils into our more solid avocado butter. And when we do that, we don't want to melt the avocado butter. So these should be at approximately the same temperature. Our avocado butter is at 69.8, which is the temperature of the room. This is under 75. So 75 degrees Fahrenheit, by the way, is the important number to know. You definitely want to have these oils under that. So that's an important part of this recipe. We also have arrowroot powder, which helps make the recipe or the body butter a little less greasy. So this is a key ingredient in body butter, I think. And then we have our essential oil. So this is pink grapefruit essential oil. We are making pink grapefruit, smells so good, pink grapefruit body butter today. In the recipe, you'll see we have tons and tons of different essential oil blends that you can use for your body butter. So the base is exactly the same. So it's these 4 ingredients: avocado butter, mango butter, jojoba, and arrowroot powder. And then you can add your own essential oil blend to that. Now, another important thing for making body butter is this mixer. This is a KitchenAid mixer. It's a stand mixer. And now this isn't a necessary tool. I would say if you're making body butter at all, especially if it's for a business, you should definitely invest in one of these because it's going to make everything a whole lot easier. You can do this body butter by hand. If you're just making it at home for yourself, then you can use a hand mixer. And you basically do the same thing. You'll just be holding your hand mixer the whole time rather than having it on a stand like this. So the attachment that I use, these stand mixers come with a bunch of attachments. This is the attachment that I like to use for body butter. And I don't know what it's called, but it's basically like a whisk type attachment. And that is what's going to mix our avocado butter. And then we're going to be adding our liquids in there in a little bit. So let's just get started. Oh, I have actually one more thing to prep before we start. And I wanted to do this on camera so you could see how I do it. Basically, we are going to be piping our body butter into these jars. So once we whip it up and we add all the ingredients, we are going to put it into a piping bag. And that way it'll be a lot easier to get it into our jars. These are 4-ounce jars, and this recipe makes exactly 13 jars, which is super nice because you don't have any waste. So I use a Ziploc bag. You can definitely use a reusable piping bag, and that is what I did when I first started making body butter. But I found the piping bag to be really difficult to clean between uses. And also, like I mentioned before, you don't want to introduce any water to your recipe. So having to clean the piping bag and then make another batch of a different scent was really difficult without having water introduced. So what I do is I use this bag as much as I possibly can. So in other words, right now we're making a grapefruit body butter. The next body butter I'm making is called Orange Blossom, which includes grapefruit in it. So typically what I would do is make 4 batches at once. So I have one batch is 13 jars. So 4 is 13 times 4. So it's 52 jars. So the first 2 batches I would do grapefruit. So I would make 13 jars of grapefruit. Then I would again make another 13 jars of grapefruit using everything the same. So you don't have to clean anything between batches. And in addition, you don't have to change your piping bag because it's exactly the same body butter. And then for the next 2 batches, I would make Orange Blossom, which has grapefruit in it. So because it already has this essential oil in there, I just go on and then make 2 batches of Orange Blossom. So I don't have to clean anything, introduce any water, and I can use the same piping bag for 52 jars of body butter. All right, so the way I do this, and if you have a reusable piping bag, your piping bag will already have a hole in it. But this tip is the piping tip, and you can use any type of tip you want. I just have a straight one, but there are some fancy ones that will dispense the body butter in a nice fancy way. So you want to cut off a little corner of this bag just with scissors. And then you're going to take the piping tip and stick it through. And you don't want to cut this hole too big, otherwise your piping tip's just going to fall right through. So make it a little bit tight. And then I just sort of squeeze the bag around it. And what we're going to do is put our body butter in there, but it's really difficult to get it in there without it being, all floppy like this, with it being all floppy like this. So I stick it into a container. This is a 2-liter container, by the way. We use these a lot in our soap studio. We also use them for body butter. And now your bag is all ready to go. I'm going to put my gloves on. Okay, so you can use your gloved hands to just kind of make a big opening in there so that you can easily get your body butter in. So now we're all set for piping, and I'm going to put this aside for later. All right, back to our stand mixer. First thing I'm going to do is put my bowl in here, and you basically just turn it to lock it into position. And I'm going to turn this stand mixer this way just so I can see what I'm doing. But I measured out, I basically weighed out all of my avocado butter. And like I said, I weighed out my mango butter and jojoba, as well as my essential oil and my arrowroot powder. So now we're going to turn this on, and we just basically want to start whipping the avocado butter, get it a little bit less chunky and solid, because then we're going to start incorporating our liquids here. All right, here we go. Okay, so on the side of the stand mixer, there's 10 different settings. And what I did just now is I just started on low until we got, you know, the consistency a little bit creamier, and then just kept going higher and higher. And now the avocado butter is kind of wedged all along the sides here. So I'm going to take this bowl out. I'm going to have to keep moving the stand mixer back and forth, which you wouldn't normally do when you're making body butter, but just so you can see. I'm going to try to get all of this off of the edges. And this avocado butter is a really nice texture, so it's pretty soft and easy to whip up. But this bowl has this little knob on the bottom, or a little section that kind of pokes up. So I want to make sure that the body, or not the body butter, it's not really body butter yet, the avocado butter doesn't get stuck down there. So I'm just moving the whole ball around. And then I scrape off on the edge like this. And then I scoop it up, send it back in. And I usually have a paper towel here. So I use a paper towel to just set my spatula on, just to keep everything clean. All right, so we're going to whip that one more time. Okay, so the idea here is not to start whipping your body butter, but just to incorporate all the ingredients really nicely. And now I feel like my avocado butter is spread out pretty good and ready for me to add the liquid oils. So here I have my mango butter and jojoba, and I'm simply going to add my essential oil in there. This is pink grapefruit. And I'm going to use a spatula clean spatula to kind of scrape out the rest of this, so I don't miss out on any of this grapefruit. Now, grapefruit is phototoxic, just so you know, which means that if you are creating a product that is a leave-on product, certain essential oils, particularly citruses, can be phototoxic, which means that if you put the body butter on your skin and then you expose your skin to sun, it can cause sunburn, or you're more likely to get a sunburn. And so just keep that in mind. When you use essential oils, you'll want to make sure that you're using the right amount. And this is all detailed in our recipe that you can get on our website. We have a lot of essential oil blends, and it takes into account the phototoxicity of certain essential oils. All right, so I'm just mixing in that grapefruit. And now we're going to start adding it to our avocado butter. Now we're going to do this in batches. I don't like to put all this liquid in at once, because then it turns into a gooey mess. It's kind of like when you're making, you know, pancakes, and you start to add the liquid ingredient just slowly and kind of get it going instead of pouring it all in at once. So we're going to do this little batch. We're going to do it in four, I said two, but I meant four phases, basically. So I'm going to put a quarter of this in. Now you want this on low, because once you start adding the liquid, it's going to get a little splashy. So start on low and then move to higher. Okay, so I added about a quarter of this in, and like I said, we're going to do this 4 times. So this is number 1. I'm going to mix it up quickly, scrape, and then do number 2, mix it up, scrape, and you get the idea. Okay, So right now there's quite a bit of liquid on the edges. So what I'm trying to do is just incorporate everything evenly. So we're going to scrape the edges of this bowl to try, let me move that out of the way, to try and get all that essential oil and the other oils incorporated. Give it a little stir. Get sure you get under in that little knobby area there in the center. Okay, scrape on the edges. All right, so that was round one. This is just how I do it, by the way. This is the technique I've come up with just on my own of like figuring out how to do this. You may not need to do 4 passes. I don't know. This is just the way I do it, and I feel like the body butter turns out really good like this. All right, here's number 2. Okay, so we've added about half the liquid now. Okay, it's starting to look really nice and getting a little peaky actually, which is nice to see. The more liquid you add, the more liquidy this gets. That's why it's really important for your, oops. It's a little awkward to keep moving this aside, but I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. Okay. Yeah, so the more liquid you add, the more liquidy this gets, which is why the temperature is really important. Let's see what this is at now. So this is at 71.5. So basically the liquid oils and the essential oil are warming up the avocado a little bit, but not too much. All right, on to number 3. Okay, so you definitely want to sort of get some of the body butter off of this whiskey part here because of this whisk attachment. Because when you move the bowl, you don't want to lose body butter. All right, so taking the bowl off again. Oops. All right, mix this up. Now I can't stress enough how important the temperature is, because if your oils are too warm, the body butter will not look solid like this. It'll be really liquidy. And what you can do in that case, let's say, you know, you're impatient, which I have been many times before, and you decide, oh, maybe 80 degrees is good enough for my oils to be. It's not, by the way, wait until they're at 75. But what you can do to speed up cooling down your oils is to put them in the fridge if you want. Make sure that there's a lid on there or something so you can stick them in the fridge and cool them down that way. I don't typically do that because we didn't have a fridge in our other studio, but here at home, I could potentially bring this in there. One thing I have done is once the body butter is in this bag, you can close it up and then put this whole bag in the fridge. Because another issue with everything being too liquidy is that when you try to pipe, your body butter can just ooze out of the piping tip and it's not even holding shape, you know, in the piping bag. So that makes it really difficult to pipe into these jars. So just keep that in mind. Try to be patient. Wait until you're at 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, the temperature of your room is going to make a huge difference. I've tried to make this body butter on warmer days, and it's actually really difficult because the room temperature was over 75 degrees. So if you're trying to make this in the summer, we always made it in the winter because it's a seasonal product, because it also doesn't ship well in heat. If you were to ship this body butter in the summer months, you would definitely want to put some ice or something around it so that it doesn't all melt and end up all gooey by the time it gets to the person who bought it. So if you're making this in the summer months, definitely make sure you're using AC just to cool down your room so that the body butter doesn't end up too liquidy. Okay. All right, so I just put the last bit of the mango butter, jojoba, and essential oil blend. Okay, again, just to reiterate, you are not trying to whip the body butter right now. We are making a whipped body butter. I don't know if I even said that at the beginning, but this is a whipped body butter. So you're basically going to be whipping air into this body butter, which is what makes it really light and fluffy and gives it that moussey texture that I was talking about. So we're going to be whipping it once we have all of our ingredients in here, but right now you're just trying to incorporate all the ingredients and make them all homogeneous. Okay. So now, by the way, you want to make sure that all of your spatulas and bowls and all that are clean before you start doing this, that your hands are clean if you're not wearing gloves, and that your containers don't have any water in them. Like I said before, don't introduce any water in here. Otherwise, you're going to need to use a preservative, which is okay. If you're concerned about water, then you can add a preservative to this. And I'm not an expert on preservatives because we don't use them in our products, but there are a lot of resources for learning about preservatives, maybe some that are a little bit more natural, but still do the job. Okay, so I'm scraping the rest of this in here because I want to make sure I get all of that essential oil and all of those butters. Okay. And then I'm going to add the arrowroot powder. And this is where I kind of feel like I'm baking because this looks like flowers and eggs in here. But I'm going to add the arrowroot powder, get that all in there. I'm actually going to scrape that out a little bit if I can. Now, arrowroot powder is one of those ingredients that feels super magical. Basically, if you have greasy hands from body butter that's too greasy, if you just put a little bit of arrowroot powder onto your hands, you'll notice that it cuts through the grease immediately. And so arrowroot powder is used in cooking, but it's also great in bath and body products to cut the grease on a lot of your products. Some people put this in lotion bars. We don't put it in our lotion bars because the lotion bar is meant to be super duper moisturizing for rough patches of your skin, like your elbows and your knees. But we do put arrowroot powder in our body butter because the body butter tends to be spread all over and you don't want it to feel super greasy. I mean, it's normal for it to be a little bit greasy because it sinks into your skin after a little bit, but you don't want it to feel overly greasy. And so this amount of arrowroot powder I find is great for making sure that the body butter still feels good on your skin, but it cuts down on that greasy feeling. All right, so we're going to get our stand mixer back here. Now, this time it's super important not to turn this on high right away because this powder in here will definitely fly everywhere if you do that. So keep it on low until all the powder is incorporated. Okay, so all the arrowroot is pretty well incorporated. I see a little bit on the edges, so I'm going to scrape one more time. And now we have all of our ingredients in here. And you'll see that this is actually a really nice texture, and you could potentially put it into the jars right now, but you wouldn't be able to fill up 13 jars with this. Because what we're going to do next is whip some air into this. And this is the part that's really fun, and also the part that's nice to have a stand mixer for, because you're going to whip this on high for 1 minute, and you'll see what a difference there is in volume of this body butter. So what I usually do is I set a timer for a minute. I'm not going to set one now because my phone is up here recording and I don't have another way to check or just to time, but I am going to use the time on the microwave just to check and see when it's been about a minute. So at this point, what you're going to do is set your timer for a minute and literally put this on high and let it go for a full minute. Sometimes I even do 1.5 to 2 minutes. And during this time, you can set up your piping bag if you haven't done that already. You can get your jars out and lids. We have 13 jars and lids right here for that. So it's an opportunity to go do something if you need to do something. Otherwise, it's only a minute, so it won't take too long. So we'll be right back. Okay, so it's been a minute and the body butter is starting to peak, which is really nice, meaning that it's thickening up and there are some peaks on top. Take this out and show you guys. Okay, so you can see that this body butter is getting thick. When you go around the edges of the bowl, you can kind of see that there's space there that stays. It has a little bit of a meringue kind of feel to it. Although I've never made meringue, so I don't really know. But this is what I'm imagining it would be like. Maybe like marshmallowy. It has this really wonderful texture. And you can tell that it's starting to fluff up. So you can even kind of hear it. Let me see if I can pick it up. I don't know if you could hear that, but you can start to feel that the texture is changing. So I'm going to do this for another minute. I'm also going to do a little temperature check just so you can see what temperature this is at. Okay, so this is 73, pretty much exactly Fahrenheit. So that's a great temperature for having that consistency that's a little bit more solid, but still obviously liquid enough to whip. All right, so we're gonna do another minute. I might actually do 1.5 minutes because I want this volume to really go up. And it is possible to over whip your body butter, I think, but it takes quite a while. So as long as you keep it to 1 minute increments, maybe 1.5 minutes. I usually actually do 1.5 minutes first and then I do a minute. So I'm gonna do 1.5 minutes this time. And, oops. We'll see what the texture looks like when we come back. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but there is if you don't have one of these stand mixers, I will link down below exactly where I got mine and what mine is. It's a KitchenAid Classic Plus. So there's the speed over on this side, including an off, which is what it's at now. And then there's also a lock for the head. So you can lock this down if you're concerned about, things flying or going crazy. So now it's locked. I just keep it unlocked so I can put this up and down as many times as I want. All right, so let's do 1.5 minutes and we'll be back. Oh yeah, that looks real good. Okay, I think this is going to be ready. So I'm going to take as much of the body butter off of this whisk as possible. Okay, friends, through both the miracle and annoyances of modern technology, we have moved forward in time because unfortunately our camera stopped working. So I am now on batch 2 and I'm making orange blossom now. So I finished up the grapefruit that we were making earlier. And this is exactly the same process. So we can start right where we left off. So I've just finished the batch of orange blossom. I'm going to take it out of the stand mixer and I'm going to move this aside. And by the way, I didn't clean any of my containers or anything before switching to this other batch because like I said, this batch contains grapefruit. So we just reused everything and that way we don't need to get anything wet and introduce water into our body butter. So this is the consistency that you are looking for. It is really creamy right now, very marshmallowy, really good texture. The peaks, I mean, it's super thick, doesn't even come off of the spatula. And that is exactly the kind of texture that you're looking for with the body butter. So what we're going to do next is put it into our piping bag. Now, I use the same piping bag for the pink grapefruit body butter that we just made. And like I said, it's the exact same essential oil that's in here, so I'm just going to reuse it. And what we're going to do, because this is so thick, is I'm just going to plop this in here. If you had a bit of a thinner consistency for your body butter, you could try to pour this into your piping bag, but I find this easier to do when it is this thick, which is what you want. All right, so I'm going to get all this body butter in here and get it ready for piping. Okay, so I'm going to tap this down just to get a little bit more space in there. And I want to try to get as much of this body butter out as possible. So I'm going to scrape the edges in this downward motion. Get all the body butter kind of to the bottom of the bowl. And then we're going to scoop out the rest. You're not going to get every last bit out probably, but you can get most of it out. You can scrape along the side and just scoop that body butter up. And what I always did at the studio, which was really fun, is to, once I was done with a scent, like in this case, we're done with these batches of body butter. The next one I'm going to make is lavender. So I'm actually going to clean everything before going to the lavender scent because I don't want any of this orange blossom scent in our lavender body butter. So I'm going to wipe everything down. But guess what? You've got some beautiful body butter right in here and a little bit in here too. So it's kind of nice to pass it down to everybody to get a little bit of body butter in there. And then that way, you know, I'm going to be cleaning this anyway. So might as well get some of that extra body butter off of there. Okay, so I'm going to put this away. And now I'm going to take my gloves off because I find this a little bit easier to do all of the piping without my gloves on. And I do reuse my gloves, so I take them off like this so that I can use them a few times. Okay. And I'm going to take the Ziploc bag and seal it up. And now we have all of our body butter in this bag. And it's nice and thick, so it doesn't ooze out of the bottom, which can happen if your body butter isn't thick enough or cool enough, really, is the secret. The other thing I have is this little tool, which I'm going to show you how to use in a minute, but it basically has a straight edge that isn't too sharp. We're going to use this to clean our bag and get as much of the body butter out as possible. So I have my jars over here all ready to go with the lids, and each one of these jars is 4 ounces, and we're going to put 2 ounces of body butter in there. The body butter has a lot of air whipped into it from all of our whipping with the stand mixer, and that's what creates that beautiful body butter texture. So we can only fit 2 ounces in here, but 2 ounces goes a long way with this body butter. Let me grab my scale. Okay, this is my favorite scale, by the way. I've probably talked about it in quite a few videos, But basically what I love about it is that it doesn't turn off after a set amount of time or with no use. And so it's really nice because if you're in the middle of doing something or you need to go grab something, then your scale stays on and it's exactly where you expect it to be, provided the batteries are working, of course. All right, so I'm going to tear that out and we're doing 2 ounces. I'm going to grab this kind of by the 3 corners because I don't want body butter to get into those corners because they're clean right now. And we're just going to pipe it right in there. And right beside me here, I have this clean cloth that I'm going to tap the jar down on. You could tap it on the table too, but it's kind of loud. All right, so I've got my 2 ounces in there. I'll put that aside. And we're going to get 2 ounces in every jar. And then if we have extra, we can go back and add a little bit more. All right, so we're on our very last jar. So I'm going to squeeze as much as I can out of this bag. And then I'll show you the little trick that I was talking about earlier. Okay. So I've got 1.9 in here. And here's what I'm going to do. This piping bag still has plenty of body butter in it. And one way to sort of squeeze everything closer to the tip is to use this tool that I was talking about earlier. You just need something with a straight edge. And actually, I'm going to put the tip of the piping bag on something clean. And then we're going to scrape the bag with this little tool. And what you're trying to do is get as much of the body butter close to the tip, but you don't want it to be, you know, oozing out of the end of the tip, obviously. So just get as much as you can over there. And then we're going to finish piping this last jar. Okay. So that's 2 in that one. Whoops. Use that to tap it down. Now over here I have 2 rows of jars. My first row has 2 ounces exactly of body butter, and these ones just have a little bit extra in them. So I'm going to go back and fill up the ones that had 2 just to add a little bit extra since we do have some extra body butter sitting in here. So 2.1 in that one. I'm just going to go down the whole row and do 2.1 in each one. And then I'll meet you when I'm done. Okay, when you're getting near the end of your bag, it's getting a little bit harder to get the body butter out. What you can do is sort of squeeze the edges here or pull on the edges with your finger just to get the body butter away from the piping tip. And then what I do is I kind of shove the whole bag into the piping tip just to get the last little bits out. And you'll see you can get a little bit extra that way. Okay, this is probably my last one. Oh, I might have one more, enough for one more. No, I barely got anything out that time, but all right. So you've used up all the body butter in your bag. And now that I'm done with my scents that are the same, I'm actually going to toss this, and you can just pull the bag off like that and then reuse the piping tip, obviously. All right, so we're going to put all of our lids on now. I'll also show you how we do our labels in case you're interested. All right, so one thing I like to do when I'm done making the body butters is just to label the scent. And the reason is that all these body butters look the same. They're all basically the same color. So you don't want to get confused as to which is which. And sometimes even when you smell them, it's a little bit hard to tell. So I just put a sticky note on top, and then I usually put these back in the box that they came in just to keep them safe and all together. And let me show you how we do our labels. So I make sure that the lid is on nice and tight, and I have a clean paper towel here that I just wipe the outside with, just to make sure there's no grease or anything left on there. And then these jars have little lines on the side, and so I just make sure that those are kind of off to the side here. I have a label here. These are our Muddy Mint labels. And for these body butters, we actually write in the name of the scent just because we have so many different scent options. And if you purchase our recipe, actually, let me finish talking about the label before I go on to that. So this label is already curved because it's been sitting on a roll. So what I typically do is just kind of get the center of it set up, and then I push away to the sides. And then we do a little Muddy Mint circle sticker on top. So as I was saying, we have a lot of different scents available for these body butters, and all those scents are going to be in the body butter download. So if you have the download, definitely check that out. We have a ton of different scents, including some luxury scents, and I have a little trick on how to make those without spending too much money. All right, that's it for the body butters. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you end up making some of these body butters either for yourself or for your customers. And hopefully your customers love them as much as ours do. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.